Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to House of Acharya. Here, every company has a story, and within every story, there is a lesson for our lives. Today, I want to ask you a simple question. More than a century ago, people considered wristwatches almost useless. So, how did Rolex become one of the most trusted watch brands in the world today? This is not just the story of a luxury brand, it is a story of vision, trust, and relentless hard work. And it is a story of having the courage to believe in your dream before the world believes in you. This is the story of Rolex. The year was 1905. At that time, most people used pocket watches. Although wristwatches existed, many considered them weak, inaccurate, and unreliable. During that same period, a young businessman named Hans Wilsdorf saw a future that others could not see. He believed that the future belonged to wristwatches. At that time, the idea sounded strange. When pocket watches had dominated for generations, why would people suddenly wear watches on their wrists? But history is often not created by those who follow the world. It is created by those who show the world a new path. Hans Wilsdorf was one of those people. At just 24 years old, he started a company in London. His goal was simple: to create reliable, precise, and high-quality wristwatches. But there was a major problem. People simply did not trust wristwatches. And without trust, success was impossible. But Hans' next decision would not only change his company's future, it would change the future of the entire watch industry. Hans understood one thing very clearly. If wristwatches were going to succeed, they needed to prove themselves. During that time, many people believed that small wristwatches could never be as accurate as larger pocket watches. But Hans refused to accept criticism. Instead, he focused entirely on precision. Every movement was tested. Every component was inspected. Every second mattered. As a result, Rolex watches began receiving some of the world's most respected accuracy certifications. This was a huge achievement during that period. For the first time, people started taking wristwatches seriously. Rolex slowly began earning people's trust. But Hans knew that precision alone was not enough. A watch could tell time, but it still had to prove that it could be trusted. Back then, rain could damage watches, dust could enter them, moisture could destroy their internal mechanisms. Wristwatches were extremely delicate. Hans knew that the future needed something stronger. After years of research, Rolex introduced a revolutionary invention, the Rolex Oyster. It became one of the world's first successful waterproof and dustproof wristwatches. But Hans understood something else as well. People do not trust advertisements. People trust proof. So he decided to conduct a bold experiment. A swimmer named Mercedes Glietze, who was attempting to swim across the English Channel, was given a Rolex Oyster watch. Even after spending hours in the water, the watch continued working perfectly. The event became major news. From that moment onward, Rolex spoke less about its products, and its achievements began speaking for themselves. That was the moment Rolex stopped becoming just a watch company and started becoming a trusted brand. Most companies advertise their products. Rolex proved its products, and that became its greatest strength. Mountains, oceans, expeditions, extreme environments. Rolex tested its watches against real-world challenges. Every success strengthened people's trust even further. Rolex was not just selling watches. It was building trust. And in business, there is no greater asset than trust. Then came another important innovation, the perpetual rotor. At that time, many watches had to be manually wound by hand, but Rolex developed a new solution. It created a mechanism that automatically stored energy through the movement of the wearer's wrist. This made watches far more convenient, and it showed one of Rolex's core principles to the world: improvement should never stop after success. Many companies become comfortable after achieving success. Rolex continued innovating even after becoming successful. As years passed, Rolex became more than a watch brand. It became a symbol of achievement. Scientists wore Rolex. Athletes wore Rolex. Entrepreneurs wore Rolex. Adventurers wore Rolex. But one thing is important to understand. Famous people did not make Rolex respected. Famous people wore Rolex because Rolex had already earned respect. That is a very important distinction. Trust came first. Prestige came later. Reputation was built before recognition. Today, many people see Rolex as a luxury brand, and that is true. But luxury alone is not the real reason behind its success. The foundation of its success is quality, precision, reliability, and long-term vision. For more than a century, Rolex has protected these values. And that has become its greatest strength. Because trust cannot be built in a single day. It has to be earned over years. Today, when people look at a Rolex, they do not simply see a watch. They see more than a century of trust. They see the dedication of thousands of craftsmen, relentless innovation, and the dream of one man who believed in an idea long before the world did. Hans Wilsdorf saw opportunity where others saw limitations. He saw future where others saw uncertainty. And that vision went on to create one of the most trusted names in the world. Perhaps that is why Rolex is more than a luxury watch brand. It is a symbol of achievement, a symbol of precision, and above all, a symbol of trust. This is not just the story of a watch, it is the story of an idea, the story of one man's belief, and the story of a legacy that became one of the most trusted watch brands in the world. This is the story of Rolex.